They are part of us. And this makes them all the more dangerous. They know us very, very, very well. They know the great weaknesses of our minds, just as they know the great strengths of our minds. They operate in what I call the gray area of human existence, that side of our lives which we don't want to acknowledge the existence of. They create, African tradition says that the Chitauri, where they engaged God himself in a terrible war, and God defeated them, the real God, Nkulunkulu, the Creator. God defeated them, and he closed their mouths so that they are unable to talk or to eat food anymore. But we are told, say, that the Chitauri fatten on the energy that we human beings give them. They make us to fight each other. And when the whole land is drowning in death and fear and terror, when hundreds and hundreds of people are angry and afraid, the Chitauri get fat because they eat that what we call the dark power, which is brought about when human beings destroy the planet on which they live.
They feed off human emotion.
Yes, sir. Very, very intense human emotion. We are told, for example, that if you see a Chitauri walking through the bush or just standing there and looking at you, and you are accompanied by your wife or your girlfriend, you must immediately make love to that girlfriend and release as much emotion as possible, and the Chitauri will be pleased and will walk away from you and not harm you. And another thing, sir, we are told that the Chitauri eat energy which is generated when hundreds of human minds or one human mind starts thinking at certain levels. We are told that the Chitauri want us to think at certain levels.
Certain wavelengths.
Yes, sir. And they reward us with long life. May I ask you, sir, have you ever thought, as a thinking person, why is it that in the great universities of this world you find professors who think at certain levels and who live unnaturally long lives? Albert Einstein, Raymond Dart, Robert Broom, all these professors live a long, long time. And my Aunt Mina, the last Sanusi in South Africa other than myself, is as active as a young girl, and yet she's close to her 99th year of life. My stepmother, Rose, she has lost nearly all her children, and she is still alive. Extreme longevity is the reward with which the Chitauri reward you if you think at certain wavelengths.
The description of your abduction clearly is describing what has become known as the Greys, what I think is also known by some as the ant people, the grey figures with the big black eyes. How do you think they connect in with the openly reptilian? And do you think that the the black covers of the eyes are covering some kind of reptilian truth.
Say, the so-called grey aliens are actually the lackeys and the servants of the Chitaur. If you see a Chitaur and you see this, there is very little racial difference. In fact, I will even go so far as to say this, that these creatures are actually the offspring of the Chitaur. The way they gather substances from human beings and from animals, the way they are the forerunners of the Chitauri in any place. And if you are very close to one of these creatures and you look into its goggle-like eyes, you will see round eyes, Mr. Icke, beyond this black goggle-like stuff. And these eyes are the real creature's eyes. Now let me tell you, there is in Lesotho a very strange mountain, a mountain called Leribe, Leribe. On this mountain, very amazing things happen after every 10-year or 20-year period. Now, not so long ago, an African farmer found an object near that mountain, an object which had crashed. And he was driving his tractor and he saw this strange object lying in the ground with tiny little bolts of lightning racing all around its edge. And the African walked up to the object, and when he wanted to touch it, a strange power struck him and sent him sprawling on his back to the ground. The African got onto his tractor and got out of there. What the African had seen had been a crashed UFO, a flying saucer. He described it very amazingly. And he said that after a few days, there appeared what he said was a huge removal van, very big, accompanied by soldiers wearing black uniforms, goggles and berets. And these soldiers lifted the object into the van, and the van drove away. But when the people came to the site, they saw that something had fallen there, but they saw no heavy tire tracks of the vehicle that the man had described. Something had crashed there, had been removed, but there were no wheel marks of the heavy vehicle he had described. Now let me tell you something else. It was in 1958. In fact, I think that the incident I'm going to describe to you is somehow connected to what happened to me in 1959. I'm sure of it. A friend of mine in Lesotho called me. He said that he had something very important and that we had to share this. He said, please, I must come to Lesotho. I must come. And I went there. And then I found that he had dug a hole at the back of his hut. And he asked me that he and I and his second wife should go into this hole on the night to come, and there to share something very, very holy. Well, we went down the hole. We used a broken ladder, and there inside the hole, we ate small pieces of something. He told me to chew these things very thoroughly, as they were quite hard. I still had teeth in my face at that time. And I chewed and I chewed and I chewed and I chewed. But I noticed that what I was chewing was some kind of dry substance, and that it had the same taste that you would feel in your mouth if you sucked a copper penny. It had that coppery taste, like as if you were sucking an old copper coin. And then we left the hole and we went into his house. And on the following day, we all became terribly ill. Very, very ill. Our skins erupted into a rash. It was very, very painful. It was very, very itchy. We bathed with urine trying to take the itching away, but it failed. We bathed with sheep dip, and it failed. And in the end, I could no longer breathe at all. My tongue appeared to swell many times its size. And then I got so sick I could barely open my eyelids. The skin was itching like mad, and I could barely breathe. And as the days went by, it was about a week, but it seemed like 100 years, slowly the rash subsided. And my skin began to peel, as did my friend's skin and the skin of his wife. We were very, very, very sick. And when I could speak, I asked him, what was the thing that you gave me to eat? This is the thing that has made us so sick. Why did you do this, my friend? He said, look, what we shared was something that can only be eaten while you are hiding in a hole. And that thing is the flesh of a god. I said, God? He said, yes. I said, but I am sick now. He said, wait, you'll recover. You either die within 2 days or you recover. Now we are going to recover because we are still alive after 2 days. Mr. Icke, I can't describe to you what happened next. I wish you to imagine, sir, you are sick, weak, and feverish. Suddenly, you get stuck, staring, raving, laughing mad. We started laughing. It was utterly incredible. What had made us what had caused the laughter we did not know, but we laughed for hours, all three of us. And then when our jaws couldn't laugh anymore, a new thing happened. My friend's eldest daughter gave us all water. And when I drank that water, my sense of taste was so heightened that I was utterly shaken. Ordinary water from a mountain spring tasted like, I don't know like what, like wine, like something out of I don't know where. My taste buds must have been souped up somehow. And then another feeling, which I cannot describe, fell over all of us. It was a feeling as if we were one with the entire universe. When I looked at a tree outside my friend's homestead, it was as if that tree was a multicolored living rainbow. When I looked at the mountain far away, my sense of sight was so intense that I could see colors beyond colors. I can't give you any other description. And then say, afterwards, I was very weak, but with a monstrous appetite. And then I left my friend's homestead and returned to South Africa. Every step of the way, I seemed like a person reborn. It was a feeling that no words can describe. And when I asked my friend by letter afterwards, what was this God flesh? He said it had been the flesh of a puana.
What we call grey.
Yes, sir. People who say that these things don't exist had better think again. They are tangible, they are smellable, and furthermore, they are edible if you are willing to take the risk. In Africa, we have an ancient custom whose existence many people deny today, that anything that claims to be a god should be eaten. There are places in Africa even now where if you are a spiritual person and you are sick, well, let me tell you what happened to me in the country today called Zaire. I got sick. I was undergoing yet another of my 7 initiations, and I fell sick from very bad running stomach. And I was so sick, everything that my friends, white friends and black friends, could do failed to help me. And then, one night, some of my teachers came to me and requested that since I was going to die, would I please allow them the honor of eating me after death? Now, sir, it's a very good thing to be invited to a dinner, but not when you happen to be part of the menu. And I recovered so quickly that I escaped from that area in one of their ramshackle buses, and I never went back. Thank you very much. Fear can be a wonderful medicine sometimes, and it was with me.
Do you think, Credo, that those senses that you experience, that really heightened sense of everything, of oneness, of whatever, are the very senses that the Chittahuli have manipulated out of us?
I do, sir. I do very much. They were senses like no human being possesses. may I add, no human being possesses anymore. It was as if at one time, a voice was speaking in my head, a very amazing voice. And after that, my powers of prophecy were intensified. This is what I think. We human beings are holier and more wonderful than we think we are. And I feel we lost something at some time in the course of our development, or shall I say, in the course of our manipulation.
Credo, this is fascinating information, which I'm sure many people in the UFO research community will be very, very interested in. That is that these grey extraterrestrials, or grey figures, whatever they are, don't actually really look like that. They're almost in disguise.
Yes, sir, they are. And I will tell you what. Grey aliens have died in various parts of Africa. They have been killed, and they are very, very quick to recover the bodies of their friends which have fallen out of their crashed spacecraft. But sometimes African sangomas steal these bodies before they can be recovered. And believe me, sir, I have heard and I have seen that butchering a corpse of one of these creatures is extremely hard work. What you think is the skin of the creature is actually a tight-fitting costume that the creature is wearing. Under this grey costume, the creature, say, is pinkish white, like a freshly skinned animal, and its eyes are round with split pupils. These are goggles which the creature is wearing. Now, how do I know that? In order to dismember a creature like this, incidentally we call them mandindane in Zulu, which means the tormentors, the torturers. In order to dismember a creature like this, you need a brand new axe from the trading store, a heavy axe sharpened to a razor's edge in order to cut through the creature's skin. The creature's skin, say, is not adhering to the flesh. You know, my skin is clinging to my flesh, yes? But the creature, there is a gap between the creature's flesh and its supposed skin. This is a material and not a skin. So the creature is actually wearing two garments. It's wearing a completely skin-tight garment which covers its entire body. And it is wearing an overall along these lines. Very often there are no gloves. And here, to cut up a mandindane, you need very, very sharp iron. And you have got to be a strong person even to reach its flesh. But once you have cut through the cover, the close-fitting covering, you can just open the whole thing and see the dead creature's flesh underneath it.
Is that Reptilian?
Yes, sir. It is. I will tell you how the creature looks like without its grey skin. It is like certain types of tropical fish. It's like the belly of that type of fish that is fried in South Africa to make fish and chips. That grey fish, that long grey fish. The texture of its real skin is like that. but the blood vessels are very close to the surface. In fact, not so long ago, Mr. Icke, right here in South Africa, several hundred school children, some black, some colored, were terrorized by a creature they called Pinky Pinky, a creature which looked as if it had been skinned alive. That was a Mandindan without its skin or costume.
It's interesting when you're talking about the black eyes of these greys being a cover for something, and then you have the stories of the men in black who seem to interact not very positively, to say the least, with people involved in UFO and UFO investigation and stuff. And these men in black have these black goggle-like sunglasses, which are almost a mirror of the same.
Exactly, sir. But let me tell you that over the last 100 years or so, the men in black have become westernized, in Africa at least. In old Africa, if you killed a Mandindan, one of these, you were visited by terrible beings who wore long black robes made of animal skin and deep hoods over their heads. And these creatures used to wear white masks with very, very terrible looking black eyes painted on them. They were called Izilo Zengubo, the beasts of the blanket. And may I tell you that these terrible beings, our African version of the men in black, used to play an important part in the choosing of certain kings in South Africa. That is one of the stories that I wish to tell you in greater detail one day. Whenever you have harmed a Mandinda, you received a visit from men in black. And one of my uncles was a night watchman just after the Second World War. And he saw what he thought was a burglar breaking into a factory which stored surplus army property. And he threw his knobkiri at this figure and hit it very hard. The creature fell behind some boxes, and then and only then did my uncle, a tough old Zulu, realize that the thing he had brought down was not a human being at all, not a young thief, but a Mandinda. My uncle threw down his second stick and ran screaming out of the factory. And not long after that, because my uncle had taken from the creature what he thought was its bag, he took the bag with him to Alexander Township after he had run out of the factory, but he could not open the bag. What I'm trying to say, Mr. Icke, is the richer we become, the more we behave as the Chitauli are said to behave. Some of us, when they acquire a lot of wealth, start consuming metals and other minerals that they really do not need, which, however, if you study the story of the Chitauri, you are told that the Chitauri use these minerals and metals as medicine. We are told, sir, that the Chitauri, when they get sick, smear their bodies with gold dust which gets absorbed into their skins and they become alright. May I point out, it was once the custom of the Munumutapa kings of Zimbabwe, the men who built the Zimbabwe ruins, that on certain rising of the day star, the priest king would be smeared from head to foot with gold dust, and sometimes he was ritually sacrificed on the top of the wall of the Zimbabwe fortress. And to my amazement, when I visited South America, I found that the ancient Mayans had exactly the same custom where a god king was smeared with a mixture of fat and gold dust.
And I know from my own research that the Maya people and the Central and South American people have massive accounts and legends of the same reptilian gods.
Yes, sir. The thing is, if you read the ancient stories of our people, or you listen to them spoken by the storytellers, you find that we human beings are somehow programmed to alter the world in which we live and render it uninhabitable to ourselves. We are told, say, by the griots of Nigeria, by the griots of the Dogon people, that at one time, a few thousand years ago almost, the entire Sahara Desert was not a desert at all. In fact, photographs have been taken of the certain parts of the Sahara from high up, which show ancient irrigation systems where there is now wind-blown desert. Questions: are we being used as instruments for the destruction of our own species? I say yes. The wealthier a person is, the more like a chitauri he or she behaves. Some wealthy people even go to the extent of throwing away their old spouses and acquiring new ones, exactly as King Samahongo of the Chitauri does. He kills and eats all his wives when they can no longer make love to him properly, and he acquires new ones. He killed and ate 36 of his wives over a long reign, and only one wife was cunning enough to keep out of his clutches. You see millionaires divorcing their wives and acquiring new wives. And the Chitauri, unlike traditional Africans, believe that a female is inferior to the male. And so do the wealthy people who acquire great wealth in this world. They tend to look down upon women and even to abuse them.
Well, let's connect this into the present day. And one thing that is a constant recurring theme is the reptilians or an extraterrestrial race interbreeding with humanity and creating particular bloodlines. And you've got an amazing artifact, I guess that's the word, necklace here, which I know is incredibly heavy, which has a very significant contribution to make to this theme of extraterrestrials or another race, not human, interbreeding with humanity. Now, first of all, where did this come from?
Sir, we don't know. This necklace has been around for so long that we don't exactly know from which tribe it came. All I can tell you is that this necklace was in existence when the king who founded the Zulu nation, Zulu, was still a boy. It is described in ancient legends centering around this king. It is called Inweba Yezimfihlo, the necklace of the mysteries. It is really a book which tells 12 different stories.
And how old do you think it is? How old do you know this history?
I don't know, sir. All I do know is that...
Hundreds of years?
Yes, very old. But it's not as old as the green face that I've just shown you.
Oh, the Chitauri.
The Chitauri face is said to be over 7,000 years old, this thing here. Now, this necklace enshrines several mysteries in it. Inside here are stones which are not from this earth. It is a very amazing story. There are 3 pebbles in here which stories say were brought to this earth by an alien baby which played with a human baby in the northern Transvaal. This...
First of all, that looks so much, well, it obviously looks very much like a spacecraft.
Yes. This half-molten object here used to be a serpent-like necklace worn by a Mashona chief. He went to investigate something which had landed in the bush and which was killing his people. And he went with his battle axe to attack this object. And the object blew a jet of very terrible fire at the chief. And he became just smoke. And this was all that was left of him. Now, this necklace enshrines one of the oldest and the greatest mysteries in our country. That the god beings which we call by the name Chitauri and which are called Zishwezi or Imanugela in the languages of other tribes throughout Africa. These gods came down to the earth in great vessels made out of gold, and they united with female human beings to create a race of kings and queens on our earth. There isn't a tribe, Mr. Icke, anywhere in Africa. And when you return to South Africa, I will ask you to investigate this very closely. There isn't a tribe anywhere in Southern, Central, Western and Eastern Africa which doesn't claim that kingship was a system that was brought down from the sky by gods who either traveled in swings, as the pygmies of Zaire say, or who came down in huge vessels which were shaped like bows, vessels made of gold, vessels bigger than mountains. I wish to share these things with you, sir, as briefly as I can. The Zulu people believed that they originated from space And their name Zulu does not mean sky, but rather interplanetary space. And the word Zulu also has to do with traveling. For example, if I say to a child, you are getting about, you are moving from village to village lazily, I say, uyazula wena. Now the word Zula, which is used to refer to Zulus, sometimes contemptuously, in Zula, means really a traveler, a voyager, somebody moving from place to place. Where? In the Izu. Now I ask you, how did a land-bound people like the Zulus know that you could travel in space? Uyazula ezulwini. You can travel in the great place of traveling. For that matter, Zulu people knew that the earth was a sphere and that it was the sun that was still in space and the various planets orbited around it. I will show you on the other necklace of knowledge. And when a Zulu refers to the earth, he says umhlaba jikelele. Now the word jikelele implies a spherical or a hemispherical object. But a Mosotho or a Motswana from Lesotho or from Botswana will refer to the world as lefatshe, which means that which is down here. And he will say, when he refers to the earth's shape, lefatshe ka bophara. Now this word ka bophara means the earth in its width. Thus, a Mosotho or a Motswana believes that the earth is flat, but the Zulus believe it is either a hemisphere or a sphere. The Zulu people were the first people to know something that is now attributed to Albert Einstein, namely that space and time are one and the same thing. Zulus knew that long before Einstein was born. They said that one other Zulu name for space is umkhathi. Umkhathi. U-M-K-H-A-T-H-I. Umkhathi. And they called time isikhathi. So you can see that Zulus, supposedly a nation of skin-wearing primitives, were aware of the fact that space and time are one and the same thing. And further, that if you could find the river of time, you could travel into the future and into the past. And many are the ancient legends which are told in Zululand of a man who traveled through time and accidentally killed a young boy who turned out to be himself in the past, and so he no longer existed.
There's an indication on the necklace, I know, around the back that the Earth is round. One of the symbols is indicating that, or a sphere.
Yes.
But I wonder what you think, Credo, of what is taught to children and students all over the world, in the universities and the fancy academic centres, that actually we are now at the cutting edge of human evolution in terms of technological knowledge and knowledge of the world and the universe, and in fact back in the ancient world, in Africa and North Africa and all over South America, they were just a primitive people.
Please, that is a lot of poppycock. fact, in my long investigation into our past, I can tell you proudly that our ancestors were 20 times cleverer than we are. What I feel and what I think is that in the past, human beings were cleverer than we are today, and that human beings knew more than we know now. We are not progressing, Mr. I. We are simply rediscovering things that were known by better men and better women than we are thousands of years ago. I wish to offer you proof of this, some of it at least. Say, there are things that I have found in my travel through the world, things that prove to me that our ancestors were highly advanced in chemistry. Our ancestors had become so clever that they could take science and reduce it to such a simple level that they were able to help hundreds of starving human beings after some traumatic happening in the past.
On some of the images on the necklace and the symbols, because that leaves no doubt that a lot of knowledge has been around for a very much longer time than we are ever told. First of all, on the hand, I'm seeing the eye. Now, the all-seeing eye and the symbol of the eye is one the Illuminati use all the time. And it's one, of course, that was a very big symbol of ancient Egypt, the Eye of Ra and what have you. Why is that eye there on that hand?
That represents the terrible eye of the Chitawuli, the eye which sees everything, the eye which knows everything. It is said that when a Chitawuli dies, he passes his dead eye onto his next of kin. And to the Chitawuli, an eye is a very, very powerful symbol. This is the eye of the Chitawuli.
Let's concentrate on some of the images on the necklace and the symbols, because that leaves no doubt that a lot of knowledge has been around for a very much longer time than we are ever told. First of all, on the hand, I'm seeing the eye. Now, the all-seeing eye and the symbol of the eye is one the Illuminati use all the time. And it's one, of course, that was a very big symbol of ancient Egypt, the Eye of Ra and what have you. Why is that eye there on that hand?
That represents the terrible eye of the Chitawuli, the eye which sees everything, the eye which knows everything. It is said that when a Chitawuli dies, he passes his dead eye onto his next of kin. And to the Chitawuli, an eye is a very, very powerful symbol. This is the eye of the Chitawuli. But there is more to this thing. Here there is a hole that goes right through the copper. Now, if you put water in that hole, you end up with a simple magnifying microscope, and you can see gems through that water. The magnification is amazing.
The great symbol is pointed out again and again on the dollar bill, which is on the reverse of the Great Seal of the United States, put on there by the Illuminati, a president called Franklin Delano Roosevelt, is the all-seeing eye. And so is it your understanding that the all-seeing eye, when it's used by the Illuminati, represents this third eye of the Chitawuli?
Yes, I do. I really am sure of this. Why? Because in Africa, even ordinary human eyes are regarded as very powerful devices of magic. If an African shows you respect, he mustn't stare at you, but he must stare at a point beyond one of your shoulders. Now, we call this hlonipa, which means deny me your eyes. We believe that when emotionally roused, an ordinary human being can inflict great damage on another human being by the unseen fires that emanate from one's eyes. We believe that a Zulu warrior must never allow his dying enemy to look at him. For example, when a Zulu was killing an enemy, he used to cover that enemy's face with his shield to prevent the enemy looking upon him with his eyes and putting a curse upon him.
It's interesting, people who experienced the Chitahuli, the reptilians, in relationship to the British royal family and others at various rituals, have said that at the point of sacrifice, the point of death in the sacrifice, that these reptilians stare into the eyes of the person dying, which would kind of fit why those warriors were very concerned about that.
Yes, sir.
What are they doing then?
We have got a ritual, sir, which covers many fields. A ritual which is called ukuthatha umoya, taking away the soul, where when a king is dying and he is fighting to pass on his knowledge and his courage to his successor, he would demand that the successor should stare heavily into the dying king's eyes. And also, when a creature is being sacrificed in Africa, whether it's a human being or an animal, that creature must be stared at by the sacrificer so that its spiritual characteristics are drunk in by the one sacrificing it. I have seen many times on hunting expeditions in Kenya, Tanzania, and other parts of Africa, when a lion is just about to breathe its last, the hunter, one of the hunters, will stare into the lion's eyes until the lion's eyes start glazing in death. It is drinking in the soul. We believe that the eyes are not just for seeing, that they are for taking as well.
Now, on the hand here is what looks like the symbol of the constellation of Orion. What's the significance of that?
Say, people throughout Africa believe that the original human beings either came from Orion or the gods for whom read the Chitauli and many other alien nasties actually come from that constellation. We call it the constellation of Umhambi, the one who travels very, very far away. And we call this constellation also the constellation of Matsieng, the giant who was sent by God to this earth to create the first human beings. Matsieng was accompanied by a male lion with a very black mane, and he was also accompanied by his dog, and he traveled throughout the world. He first created the first race of human beings, and they were so stupid in appearance that he buried them alive in a cave And then he created the next race of human beings, which was clever, and we are the descendants of that race.
Also on the hand is what we would call today the Star of David, which of course is not actually a Jewish symbol. It started being used quite relatively recently in that sense, but it's actually a symbol that's been found all over the ancient world. What's the significance of that being on the hand?
There are several interpretations of this very powerful magical symbol. We say that there are actually two universes living side by side. A female universe, which is our universe, and a male universe. And to Sanusis, these two triangles, a triangle facing downwards represents the descending female principle, and a triangle going upwards represents the rising male principle. It is a symbol of the unity of the feminine and the masculine. It is in fact the symbol, a very important symbol of duality.
Is this the kind of shape of spacecraft, etc., or flying craft that the beings from other planets were supposed to have flown in, or not?
No. This, you see, there are various shapes. There are spacecrafts which are shaped like boomerangs or bows. These are very, very, very big. Then there are spacecraft which are shaped like pipes, like huge pipes, roughly pointed at either end. And out of those huge pipes come these little things here. They are carried inside these huge pipes. Yes, sir.
Now, if we could talk about this fella.
Yes.
First of all, the penis and all this stuff, that relates, I would have thought, to the penis of Osiris in Egyptian legend, and the same recurring theme. Would that be along the right lines?
We say, sir, that King Samahongo, who is represented here, the lord of all the Chitauri, call them what you will, had his penis cut off by Prince Muari, an African hero, and he replaced it with a golden one. Originally, we are told, this thing was made of gold. And now each time when we recall the story of the great marriage between human women and Chitauri men, we unite these creatures symbolically. And sometimes when the necklace is lying on the ground, we make a bed out of animal skin for these two figures, and then we lay them side by side and cover them with a small skin.
So, why are the depictions of the gods, if they were reptilian, why are they not constantly reptilian? Why are they symbolized in other forms?
Because it is very, very, very forbidden to portray a Chitauli as it really is. Only in that large green head do we see a Chitauli represented more or less as it is.
But this was dictated by the Chitauli from
Yes.
the start, was it?
Yes.
All along.
It was. You are not allowed to represent the sons of the python as they really are. Then you are really in trouble. If you want to talk about the Chitauli, you must either play with shadows, you must place an image of a Chitauli against a light and project its shadow onto the wall.
So you've got a fish, I know, on the necklace as well, and the fish are scaled. Is this anything to do with the symbolic representation of the Chittahuli in a way that they couldn't do it openly?
Yes, sir. There is a particular Chittahuli who is called Wowane by our people. Wowane was one of the few good Chittahuli, because there are also some good people amongst them. And Wowane had a brother called Mpangu. According to one of the great stories, there erupted a terrible war on the red world where human beings had originally been created. And this war was between men and women. Yes, sir. And in this world, men and women nearly decimated each other. But they were rescued by the Earth Mother, who sent a great Nkanyamba, that is, a great dragon, to come out of the sky, to take them into its stomach, and to bring them down to, not to our earth, to a beautiful watery world near the star of the red dog, Injebomvu, which the white people call Sirius, the star of anger. There, the human beings were settled, but human beings started eating creatures which they found in the sea, which they thought were fishes, but which were really human beings. Human beings, we are told, started eating the Chittahuli who lived in the sea, according to one story. And the Chittahuli fought back against human beings. They attacked them with tornadoes, they attacked them with tidal waves, and the human race was nearly wiped out. And then two brothers, two Chittahuli youths, Mpangu and Wowane, took pity upon the human race. And they went into the sky and looked for a great egg. And they hollowed out this egg, emptied its contents out, and brought the egg to that world and loaded the surviving human beings and brought them to our world here. We say that Wowane gave us the power of kingship. He brought it out of the sky. And if you notice, in many parts of Africa, ancient kings used to wear a wooden helmet with golden horns. It was true in West Africa, and it was true also in Southern Africa, in the great Munumutapa Empire.
The horns representing the Chittahuli.
Yes, the power of the Chittahuli. Because to a Chittahuli, horns are not just for goring other Chittahuli as oxen gore each other. No. Horns are a symbol of status. And through its horns, a Chittahuli is able to communicate with human beings far across the face of the earth.
So the horns were like antennae then?
Yes, they were instruments of projecting power. In fact, it is said by storytellers that King Samahongo punishes those Chittahuli who show mercy to human beings by pointing at them so that both their horns fall off their heads. And the Chittahuli is therefore unable to direct human affairs through his or her horns.
It's also interesting that the descriptions of the Chitahuli, with the horns and sometimes the tail and stuff, is very, very close to how Christians and those sort of stories have depicted the devil.
Yes, sir. And one thing that interests me is this, that depictions of the devil have subtly changed over the centuries. But there is a difference now. First, originally, the devil was depicted as a hook-nosed creature, like a caricature of a North African Moor. That was at the time when the Europeans were fighting the Moors as well as the other Arabs during the Crusades. Many depictions of the devil then show the devil as having a hooked nose. And then later, somewhere in the 19th century AD, the devil was depicted as an African with a snub nose, thick lips, and very dark skin. But what amazes me is that now, more than ever before, the devil is represented as a Chitahuli. What concerns me, sir, is this, that these alien creatures are now about to reveal themselves, and they are making us aware of how they look like. If you look, for example, at bioscope films which were made in the 1950s, the 30s, and so on, depictions of space aliens of that time are ridiculous, very laughable, but not anymore, sir. Today, we are having films that depict the grey aliens exactly as they really are, and the Chitahuli exactly as they really are. My question is why? Are we being prepared for a major event? And let me share this with you. The group of American people who came to visit me a week or so ago and who left a rather unveiled threat about me shutting up or else my wife will die, who warned me about a certain creature called Eleazar or Melchizedek, that this creature is watching me. These people said this, that on Lake Titicaca there is a hidden beam of light coming from the sky onto the surface of that South American lake, and that on the 9th of September 1999, something very interesting is going to happen at Titicaca. Now, I'm interested to know what this is.
Well, I know from my own travels to that area that there are endless sightings of craft and beings in that area. I've been there twice myself, and I do think, from my own research, Credo, that we are being prepared for these beings to openly be seen.
And being prepared this way, sir, when we do see the nasties, we are not going to react to them with the fear that we would otherwise have reacted. Because now what game is someone playing? I think, sir, that they are playing the game that whoever they are, that we should accept these beings and welcome them with open arms and make them our masters.
I've yet again.
You see, sir, there has been a steady build-up in books, in children's comics, and in other things of the fact that we must accept these creatures. It started with the film E.T., where a cute little alien creature got lost on Earth and fought hard to be accepted by human beings. I think the same thing is on the cards here. The question is why?
One other thing I would just like to raise before we move into the bloodlines and their connections to the Illuminati is one thing that keeps coming up in my work is that some of these Chitahuli, these reptilians, at a high level of their hierarchy are actually white. Have you come across that?
Yes. They are not white like white people. If you take white cardboard and you soak it in dirty water, that is the color you will get. That is the color of the Chitahuli. And wait, sir, let us think carefully about this. According to African storytellers, the Chitahuli have got cold blood. They feel cold very quickly. And where they dwell under the earth, where the great sun god banished them, they dwell there surrounded by great fires because their blood is cold. They freeze eternally. And so if you come across them in their caves, there are many, many cooking fires lit there.
That's interesting, with the symbolism of the devil being in the fires of hell.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And there is another thing. The Chitahuli, their eyes, terrible as they are so efficient that if a Chitahuli appears suddenly into the hot African sunlight, two things happen to him. His skin dries and blisters, and he goes totally blind. In fact, sir, there have been a strange race of aliens which have been seen in Africa, even by white people, which I think are actually Chitahuli. When you run and the thing chases you, it stops immediately when a car's headlights hit it and it becomes blind. Another thing, we are told amongst our people that a Sangoma must always have a bogo. This is a sharpened wooden stick which he or she must carry at night. We are told that a sharpened stick is the only weapon by which you can kill a Chitahuli.
Well, of course, again and again as you speak, what comes to mind is the story of Dracula. Count Dracula, the stake in the heart, the blood drinking, which is precisely what this Chitahuli and their crossbreeds seem to be into.
But it is not just any wood that you must use against a Chitahuli. We believe that Rhodesian teak, a wood which has got a strange bitter taste, is the one type of wood that is poisonous to the Chitahuli. And down there, you see a long stick that I am carving in preparation for the year 2000. I might not be alive to see the year 2012. But these sticks, which I've been working upon for the last 5 years, is going to be the one stick which my successor will carry, and it will end in a sharp point. This wood, rhodesian teak, is the wood that we say can actually kill a chitauri. And where the chitauri are found, you find rhodesian teak or any other teak trees either being felled in large quantities or being pushed over by elephants. May I point out to you, sir, that many of the trees that are being destroyed in the Amazon jungle and in the Southeastern Asian jungles, as well as in the African jungles, are teak, the one wood that the chitauri fear. And while on the subject of wood, the only mask that can protect you against the chitauri is a mask made of teak. And in some of the flea markets around Johannesburg, I'm seeing more and more masks carved in Mozambique and in Zimbabwe, representing a chitauri. The eyes are huge, round, with slits through which a person can see, and the lips are non-existent, and so is the nose. I've seen hundreds of such masks being sold by curio sellers in the streets.
One of the other things that comes up in terms of the way they look is the domed head. Now, I was in Egypt recently and saw depictions of Nefertiti and the Akhenaten family, and they had big domed heads. Is this a connection?
Yes. Yes, sir. You see, we human beings tend to imitate those creatures that we call gods. It's going on even now. When African women saw white people, they named them Abelul, which literally means the gods. And today, in America and in Africa, black women and some black men are going out of their way to give themselves hair which is European and not African in character. Now this thing it dates back thousands of years. First of all, the one race of the chitauri, the ones that are called Nomo or Nomo by the Dogoni people, are depicted as having beard-like growths of the same type that look like the beards of Egyptian pharaohs. They are shown having, it is said that when a chitauri gets very old, after tens of thousands of years, he or she develops a bone-like growth under the chin, which twists around like the horn of that kind of fish-like creature I saw in Europe in a picture called a narwhal. And this thing curls up this way. Now, Egyptian pharaohs used to wear beards like that. And some African kings wore beards like that, real beards or even false beards made out of ivory or out of the tusk of a warthog. And there was a time definitely in history when African kings as well as Egyptian pharaohs went out of their way to imitate the appearance of the chitauri. Queens like Nefertiti had their faces misrepresented by the court painters. They looked exactly like the Chitauli as near as possible. The high cheekbones, the drooping chin, the unusually large head. African sangomas, African inyangas, ancient Egyptian pharaohs, all of them used to wear headdresses that made their heads look much larger than they actually were. If you look, say, at the crown, certain crowns worn by Egyptian kings, the whole head, the crown, is intended to be an extension of the pharaoh's head, to give the pharaoh an appearance of above average intelligence. In Africa, we had kings who favored headdresses made out of the scrotums of elephants or rhinoceroses or even buffaloes. A scrotum which was dried and made bulbous and worn on the head by the king to make his head look larger than it was. And lastly, in ancient Greece, at the time when Greece reached the great heights in its culture and civilization, the great ruler Pericles used to wear a special soldier's helmet with a bulbous skull, a helmet which made his head look much bigger than it really was.
Still do that today? Are there still African traditions that do that today?
Yes, sir. Yes, very much so. And in America, some Native American shamans used to wear a special head made out of the head and the horns of a buffalo, which also made the man's head look bigger than it is. Say, popes, the Pope in Rome wears a hat which is intended to show him as having a brain bigger than average. That crown which has got three crowns, one on top of the other one. And now, bishops, especially in the Greek Orthodox Church, they wear crowns like that. And the Tsar of Russia, one of the Tsars, wore a bulbous crown which was in two sections, which made his head bigger than it really was. And in Persia, in Iran, some ayatollahs wear a turban whose effect is to make the man's head look bigger than it is. So does a Sikh. And so, for that matter, to the ancient priests of Israel, they also wore an iron-shaped headdress, whose impression was to give him a far and above size head.
Aren't there also traditions in which they manipulate children's heads as they're growing so that they become more stone-like?
Yeah. During my travels in Africa, sir, I came across an amazing people whom you must visit. They are called the Mangbetu people, and they live near Lake Rudolph in Central Africa. They are a beautiful, aristocratic people. And what they don't know about the universe is just not worth knowing. The Mangbetu people believe that an elongated skull with a flattened forehead pleases the gods. They flatten the skulls of their children, causing constant headaches to the child even when the child has grown into adulthood. And I asked a beautiful Mangetu woman, "Madam, why do you torture your children this way?" The woman, the wife of a senior chief, said to me, "Look, the gods want us to be like this."
The story that you're telling, Credo, from the African perspective, is it in effect the same story as told in the tens of thousands of clay tablets found in what we now call Iraq, become known as the Sumerian tablets, that talk about a race of gods called the Anunnaki, who came in and brought knowledge, ruled the people, and interbred them?
Yes.
Do you say, therefore, that the Anunnaki in those stories that have increasingly, of course, been translated in a number of books, they were reptilian, you say?
Say, all I do know is this, that here in South Africa, amongst the Xhosa people, amongst the Zulu people, there are beings who are very revered even now, and they are called Amanuna or Amanono. Amanono is Zulu, Amanuna is Xhosa. Now these beings are godlike beings, we are told. They can change their faces. They can change their appearance. Yes, sir. They are shape shifters. A manuna, now if a Xhosa man has married a very beautiful wife, a wife whose face seems to change every day, he teases that wife by calling her his inuna, linuna lam. In other words, a shape shifter. Say, it is said that the people who are closest to the hearts of the Manuna gods are women. And why? Because the women give to the Manuna the power of, they worship the Manuna, they hero worship them, which explains why Nefertiti wanted herself to look like one of them, and her children too. She was actually hero worshipping these creatures, and the how you say, women are copycats, and I'm not being sexist when I say this. Women will copycat any being that they think is supreme.
In Egypt also, you have the python-like headdresses, which are pretty obvious when you look at them, that the pharaohs were connected with.
Yes, sir. And the reptile has played an unusually strange part in the culture of all African tribes. For example, it is my suspicion that we black people of Southern Africa are going to be deprived of our nationhood in the very near future, and that we are going to be ruled by people of Uganda. But wait, what is the real meaning of the word Baganda? Baganda. And what is the creature that you see depicted on the walls of houses and on the roofs of houses of some of the greatest empires in Africa? It is the python. There was a golden python which was used as a decoration on the roof of the house in which the king of Benin, the Oba, lived. Zulu people revere the mamba. a very terrible snake. Zulu people revere other snakes as well. And in Venda, in the northern Transvaal, the Venda people regard the snake as well as the crocodile as sacred. And they, even today, their girls dance at initiation, a long, rather sinuous dance representing the movements of a python. And they call that dance the Domba dance. And Domba is the ancient name for a female python.
Well, wherever you look, all over the world, whether it's the Maya of Central America, South America, Africa, anywhere, the symbolism of the snake, the crocodile, the representation of the reptilian is there. You go into Europe, and the Illuminati created cathedrals like Notre Dame in Paris. You've got the stately homes of the aristocracy, etc., with the gargoyles, the reptilian figures. It's been in our face, but we just somehow have had a blind spot to see it.
We human beings have idolized the reptile since the very supposed birth of our history. Go even further, much further. What was the creature which was honored by the ancient Greeks in their Delphic oracle? The python. What is the creature that stands next to the figures of the goddess Athena? The python. No matter where you look, go to China, where I once went. Who are the principal characters who brought wisdom to humankind? Creatures, part snake and part human being. One of whom I remember correctly was called Nu, a word which occurs also in Africa. And her brother was Kwa, and sometimes it's turned into one creature, Nukwa, she. Everywhere we human beings have sacrificed our dignity as a species and attributed great intellect and great glory to reptiles, tortoises, turtles, lizards, snakes. Why? And even now, sir, our fascination with the reptile and the amphibian has not stopped. In fact, it's growing. The popularity of all those dinosaurs in cartoon as well as in serious form, it makes me uneasy.
If we could just pick up this line of bloodlines, which the Sumerian tablets talk about, which you talk about, the interbreeding of humanity, and how the accounts explain that these crossbreeds were put into the positions of royal ruling power, almost as like demigods, middlemen between the gods, the Chitahuli, the reptiles, and the people. Those bloodlines, in my own research, became the European royal families and aristocracy, and today are the ruling, banking, business, and political and royal lines of the world. And the genealogy supports this increasingly. Is there a tradition also that the royal lines of Africa go back to the same source?
Please, you don't have to believe me. Go to Rwanda and there talk to the people there. They will tell you that the founding ancestors of their dynasties, the first kings who came from the sky, and they were called Imanugela, the ascending ones. Say, many African tribes believe that when the gods came down from the sky, they found human beings very, very stupid. And the human beings could not come before the gods in order to be taught. So what the gods did, and this is a story that you also find amongst the Dogoni people in West Africa, because the human beings were afraid of approaching these reptile gods. The reptile gods cold-bloodedly slaughtered one of their number and shed out its flesh with a specially gathered crowd of human beings. And these human beings then became the ancestors of our first great kings. Now, sir, African kings jealously guarded their blood.
If the royal lines of Africa claim descendants from the same source, basically, have those lines interbred as obsessively as the European aristocracy and royal family, and not bred outside of those lines?
Yes, sir. Royalty had to marry royalty. That was one of the strictest laws in ancient times.
Which is obviously where we get the term the divine right of kings from. It's not actually God, it's actually the gods.
Yes, sir, yes. Royalty intermarried with royalty. You were not allowed to take a commoner as your senior wife if you were a king. You could take commoners after your senior wife.
After the genetics has been achieved.
Yes, sir. Now, another thing, it is like the Sangomas. Very, very strictly speaking, a Sangoma who was sometimes viewed as a king or a queen was not allowed to marry outside her caste or his caste. Sangoma had to marry Sangoma, otherwise the non-Sangoma blood would pollute the god blood inside the Sangoma.
The lady that I quoted in my books, Kathy O'Brien, who wrote her own book, Transformation of America, about being a mind-controlled slave of the American elite, she talks in there about seeing George Bush as president and vice president shapeshift into a reptile. And so many other people have told me this story of world leaders today changing into reptiles in front of their eyes and then changing back again. And Miguel de la Madrid, the president of Mexico at the time of George Bush, said to Kathy O'Brien, and she quotes in her book, that a reptilian extraterrestrial race interbred with the ancient Central American people because they needed to create bloodlines through which they could operate.
Yes.
And he said that these bloodlines were, in effect, today's world leaders. Does it fit with your knowledge, Credo, that the royal lines of the Chitahuli reptilian human interbreeding that become the demigods and the royal families, etc., that they have gone on in Africa, as well as the rest of the world, to become the ruling lines and the ruling people of these countries?